At the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, 11 kilometers straight down, sits the Challenger Deep, 36,089 feet below sea level. The pressure there reaches 1,086 bars, enough to collapse a human body in milliseconds. No nation permits unsanctioned descent to this location. ROV footage retrieved from maximum depth is routinely classified or pulled from public access within 18 months of retrieval, and something at the floor of that trench absorbs sonar signals completely. Nothing comes back. In the 4th century, a council of church authorities met in Laodicea. They reviewed a list of sacred texts, and they made a decision about one in particular: banned, buried, declared dangerous. 3 words, 1 vote. 1 book removed from the Western canon so completely that most people alive today have never heard its name. The Book of Enoch disappeared from mainstream scholarship for over 1,000 years. Then, in 1773, a Scottish explorer named James Bruce returned from Ethiopia carrying 3 physical copies. The text resurfaced, and its status flipped, because when the Dead Sea Scrolls were excavated at Qumran beginning in 1947, fragments cataloged as 4Q201 and 4Q202 confirmed what Bruce's copies already showed. This was not a medieval forgery. This was not a fringe document, pre-Christian origin, verified. The text existed before the council had any reason to fear it, which means the council had every reason to remove it. What those fragments contain is not allegory. It is not poetry dressed in metaphorical language about the afterlife. Enoch recorded a physical location, a containment zone, sub-oceanic, bounded, described with measurements and physical properties that a man writing in the ancient Near East had no scientific framework to possess. In the next several minutes, you will see what 3 specific passages from that text actually say, what modern deep ocean research has confirmed in the same locations, and why the convergence between these 2 bodies of evidence has never been addressed by the institutions that hold both. If forbidden biblical history is the kind of record that keeps you up at night, hit subscribe. Every week, this archive surfaces what was sealed. The passage sits in the Jayez manuscript held at the British Library under the reference Oriental 485. R.H. Charles examined it. He translated it in 1906. His translation remains the standard. The text is drawn from the section scholars designate as 1 Enoch verses 11 and 12 of the 18th passage, and what it describes is not symbolic. It is a physical report. The gaze term used in that passage is a cognate of the Hebrew tehom, not a pit, not a cave, not an underworld in the mythological sense. Tehom is a pressurized, bounded deep, a contained body of water under structural force. The same word appears in Genesis chapter 1 verse 2, the deep over which darkness moved. Ancient Hebrew writers used tehom specifically to mean a body of water sealed beneath weight, bounded, pressurized, not open to the surface. Enoch does not use the word loosely, he uses it as a location marker, and then he describes what is inside it. He describes columns, frozen columns of stone standing from the floor of the tehom. He describes fire erupting at their base, not fire above the water, not fire on land, fire burning beneath frozen stone at the bottom of a bounded, pressurized deep. He describes the heat rising through the cold. He describes the contrast between the temperature of the surrounding water and the temperature at the base of those columns as absolute, extreme. 2 states of matter that should not coexist, and yet they do, in the same location, simultaneously. He had no way to know this. The deep ocean floor was not accessible to any civilization of his era. No instrument existed to measure pressure at that depth. No vessel could reach it. No framework of natural philosophy at the time proposed that fire could burn beneath a frozen seafloor. The physical model did not exist, and yet, in 1977, the research vessel Knorr, operating under a joint expedition from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution and the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, lowered equipment to the floor of the Pacific Ocean along the Galapagos Rift. What the instruments found shattered the existing model of deep ocean geology. Superheated fluid, measured at 750 degrees Fahrenheit, erupting through fissures in a seafloor sitting in water measured at 34 degrees Fahrenheit, fire and ice, simultaneously, in the same location, at the bottom of a pressurized, bounded deep. The structures through which that fluid erupts are formed from minerals deposited as the superheated water hits the freezing ocean. The deposits build upward. They form columns. Tall, dark, narrow columns rising from the seafloor, venting heat from the base while the surrounding stone remains frozen solid. The scientific community named them black smokers. Enoch called them pillars of fire. Same structures, same physical properties, same location type, a pressurized, bounded, deep, inaccessible from the surface, where fire erupts through frozen columns of stone. One description was written in Ge'ez, preserved in a manuscript that a council voted to remove from circulation in the 4th century, and locked inside a library catalog reference most people will never search. The other description was published in Science magazine in 1979, 2 years after the instruments confirmed it, and celebrated as one of the defining discoveries of the 20th century. The ancients called them pillars of fire. We call them black smokers. 14 centuries of suppressed manuscript, one oceanographic expedition. The same phenomenon described with the same physical precision from opposite ends of recorded history. But the text does not stop at fire. Fragment 4, Q206, is a Dead Sea Scroll. It rests in the custody of the Israel Antiquities Authority. The translator on record is Joseph Millick, 1976. The text it preserves is 1st Enoch, the portion describing what Enoch witnessed beneath the deep. The specific passage comes from 2 locations within that document. The first describes a place of binding. The second describes what is held there and how. Millick spent decades working with these fragments. What he transcribed was not allegory. The language does not permit that reading. The Ge'ez term is makwamya. It does not translate cleanly as chain. It does not mean rope or bond in any conventional sense. The root carries the meaning of a binding that holds form through cold, a structure that fixes something in place not by force alone, but through encasement. The thing bound is not merely restrained, it is frozen into its position, shape preserved, movement eliminated, until something changes. The watchers, as Enoch describes them, are locked in place, immobile, encased beneath the deep. The text is precise about this. They are not wandering. They are not weakened. They are held by a binding that is structural, a frozen architecture that keeps them exactly where they are. The manuscript uses makwamya 3 times in this passage, 3 times. Repetition in ancient Ge'ez is not stylistic decoration. It is emphasis. It is the writer insisting you understand the mechanism. He had no way to know. No diving apparatus, no seafloor survey, no spectrographic analysis of sediment cores. The deep ocean in the 2nd century before the Common Era was not a place of data. It was a place of myth. And yet Enoch describes a frozen binding beneath the deep with a specificity that should not exist in that century. Here is what we found. Beneath the seafloor, frozen into the sediment in a lattice of ice and gas, there are structures called methane hydrates. The United States Geological Survey has quantified them. 1.8 times 10 to the 18th grams of carbon, locked solid beneath the ocean floor. That number requires a moment. It is not a regional deposit. It is a planetary-scale frozen reservoir, distributed across abyssal sediment worldwide, held in place by the precise combination of pressure and cold that exists only at those depths. The mechanism that holds them is a clathrate cage. Water molecules arrange themselves into a crystalline lattice. Gas is trapped inside. The structure holds as long as temperature and pressure remain within a narrow range. When those conditions shift, the cage destabilizes, the gas releases, the binding breaks. The USGS began documenting active destabilization in 2012. By the most recent survey count, 570 active seep sites have been identified on the Atlantic seafloor alone. These are not geological anomalies. They are the frozen binding beginning to fail. Enoch described a frozen encasement beneath the deep. A structural binding, not a metaphor. a mechanism that holds until appointed conditions are met. We went down there with submersibles and sonar and sediment cores. We found 1.8 times 10 to the 18th grams of carbon locked in crystalline cages across the ocean floor, and we found 570 places where those cages are already opening. The ancients called them frozen chains. We call them clathrate cages. The phenomenon is identical. The century between the descriptions is 3,200 years wide, and this is where it gets disturbing. The Ethiopic Ge'ez Codex held at the British Library carries the shelf mark OR.485. Robert Henry Charles translated it in 1906. His translation remains a foundational reference. The passage in question comes from two locations within 1st Enoch, the section on the appointed judgment and the section on the final release. The specific Ge'ez term is mi'ad. Charles rendered it as appointed time. That translation is accurate but incomplete. Mi'ad does not simply mean a future moment. It carries the sense of a scheduled event, a release that is not conditional on human decision or divine impulse alone, but on the fulfillment of physical conditions. A trigger. The text does not say the bound ones will be released when God decides. It says they will stir when the deep itself begins to move. That is a specific claim. The release is tied to the behavior of the deep. When the deep moves, the appointed time has begun. He had no way to know this. No oceanographic instrumentation. No thermal sensors deployed at abyssal depth. No baseline temperature records stretching across decades. In the 2nd century before the Common Era, the deep ocean did not move in any way that was measurable, observable, or even theoretically understood. And yet Enoch links the appointed release to movement within the deep itself, as if the deep were a clock, and its movement were the mechanism of the schedule. Here is what NOAA recorded. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration published findings in 2023. Abyssal water temperatures are rising. The measurement is 0.02 degrees Celsius per decade. That number sounds small. It is not small. The abyssal zone is the most thermally stable environment on the planet. It has been stable for geological timescales. A measurable rise at that depth, at that rate, sustained and accelerating, is not a fluctuation. It is the deep beginning to move. The methane hydrate clathrate system is sensitive to exactly this range of thermal shift. The cages do not require dramatic temperature change to fail. They require sustained incremental change within a narrow threshold. 0.02 degrees per decade compounding is within that threshold. The deep is moving. The frozen binding is responding. In 2021, seismologists detected an anomaly near Mayotte in the Indian Ocean. The signal traveled 11,000 kilometers. The duration was unusual. The frequency was unusual. The source was not immediately identified. Multiple institutions analyzed it. The leading explanation involved a deep submarine volcanic intrusion, but the signal pattern did not match any previously cataloged event. It remains, in the formal literature, anomalous. The text says the bound ones will stir when the deep itself begins to move. NOAA has measured the deep moving. The USGS has documented 570 sites where the frozen binding is opening. And in 2021, something 11,000 kilometers wide sent a signal that no instrument had ever recorded before. Mi'ad, the appointed time, not a vague prophecy. A scheduled release event tied to the thermal and physical behavior of the deep ocean, described in a manuscript that has sat in the British Library since before the science existed to confirm it. But here is what makes this stranger than anything before it. Fragment 4. Q201 sits in the shrine of the book in Jerusalem. It is publicly viewable. You do not need a research credential. You do not need an institutional affiliation. You can stand in front of it today. The USGS methane seep data is open access at usgs.gov. Every one of those 570 sites is on record. The thermal data from NOAA is published and downloadable. None of this is hidden. None of it requires special access to verify. The mechanism Enoch described is not dormant. It is measurable. It is moving right now, at depth, beneath the ocean floor, in the same locations the data has already marked. No institution has closed the gap between what the text says and what the instruments are reading. The gap is still open. The evidence still sits there. Which passage from the Book of Enoch unsettles you most? Tell us below. This archive opens a new forbidden record every week. Subscribe if you're still listening.